OKC made some big time moves. They traded for Alex Caruso. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein. This team was the first seed in the West last year. They won 57 games. Do you think that they're now the best team in the Western Conference? It should be favorites to make it out the West.
Oklahoma City is going to the finals next year. I'm really confident in that. Alex Caruso, you get the best perimeter defender, and statistically, you pair that with the best perimeter defender in the Lugan Storts. Here's the thing. You have a little bit more of a reliability on Alex Caruso on the offensive side. Another guy that can handle the ball, a guy that can stretch the floor, a great passer also. But what you brought him to this team to do is to fit your culture on the defensive side. And Caruso's going to do that and then some. Now you also bring in Isaiah Hartenstein. What did you lack? You needed rebounding. You needed another interior presence. You got the best available on the market. You had to overpay for him. That was the main reason why you were able to drag him away from New York. But it's not that he's going to clog up space and be a negative in that regard, because he is a great connector. He is a great passer. He has great touch around the rim. Riv, you and I already talked about how he has that little sky jump hook that's just cash every single time he throws it up. He was uber efficient for them, and on the defensive side, he fits exactly what they want to do because he was one of the best big defenders in the game last year. So to me, I look at this roster, the fact they were able to bring back Aaron Wiggins, the fact they were able to bring back Isaiah Joe on team friendlies. I anticipate SGA to be just as good or maybe even slightly a little bit better than what he was this past season, which locks him to be a first-team All-NBA player. J-Dub only should get better. Chet Holmgren, now that he has the experience of being in a playoff setting, he should only get better. This team is near perfect. I think that they are the favorites to come out of the Western Conference, and this would be my team to do it.
I said this when we were having the argument about Big Three. You could talk about the Caruso pickup. You could talk about the Hartenstein pickup, re-sign their own guys. But if they do want to be favorites, which I think they should be right now, but if they want to execute that and actually get to the finals, I think you need to see some sort of leap from J-Dub or Chet. I think where SGA is right now, he could definitely take another playmaking leap, as we've discussed earlier in the show, and become, an above average to really good playmaker, because right now he's probably hovering around just an average playmaker for his position. But if J-Dub's able to take another leap and he's efficient in the playoffs, if Chet's able to, of course, have another year under him coming off the injury, be able to hit the three more consistently, maybe be able to take advantages more consistently, as we saw Porzingis do kind of later in his career. Of course, Chet is still super young. That's the key for me. That unlocks everything for the Thunder, because Caruso is a great pickup. We know Lou Dort can play great defense, especially on bigger forwards like a Luka Doncic, just big wings that should be. But if those two can step up, right, because we know what Caruso is going to give us, we know SGA can give us, if those two can step up, that's how this team gets over the hump. And hell, this was a team that if they even just got average shooting against the Dallas Mavericks, we could talk about them being in the Western Conference Finals. We'll see what happens when they go up against Minnesota, because that would be a really tough defense to go up against, but they have great offense that I think would match that well. But they weren't that far away from kind of being in that realm. They went toe-to-toe with Dallas. Of course, they lost in 6, but again, just a couple possessions, a couple games that they had a big comeback, or they let up a big comeback. They were in all of these games. So when we're going into next season talking about the top groups, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Denver, whether it's OKC, I don't feel any less confident in OKC than I do all of those teams, because I think them and Dallas, another 7-game series that could go either way. With Denver missing KCP, of course, losing Bruce Brown last year, now you're adding Christian Brown into the starting lineup. You're relying more on your younger players who need to step up. OKC has the continuity. They're probably going to get better, and they have playoff experience under their belt. So I think going into next year, they should be, especially after being the number 1 seed this previous year, which came out of nowhere. It's a little bit different now because you kind of snuck up on teams, right? We were all expecting a bit of a leap, but we're expecting them, you're a top 6 team, you're either playing, you solidify yourself as like one of the up-and-coming teams. So it's kind of easy to sneak up on guys. Now that you have that stamp, we're the number 1 seed. SGA just had an MVP type season. J-Dub broke out into like a top 30, 40 type dude. Now it's a little bit different when you're going into these regular season games, because people are like, okay, this is a for-real team. But I definitely think they should be in that conversation when we're talking about tiers in the Western Conference.
I think OKC is easy to grasp onto because they're the only team in the West that didn't lose anything and gained a whole lot. With the Mavericks, they got Klay Thompson, but Derrick Jones Jr. in that series against OKC held SGA to 37% from the field. He was an elite defender on him, and losing him, it is going to be felt. But the Mavs are hoping to get a boost on offense. Denver loses KCP. Minnesota adds Rob Dillingham. they didn't really lose much either. They lost Kyle Anderson, who for certain matchups is more is better, is beneficial for them, like against Dallas when they had him guard Luka.
Yeah.
But ultimately, OKC, they improved, and they didn't lose anything at all. And they're the only team now that has 5 players outside of the Boston Celtics within the top 50 of BPM. It's SGA. Isaiah Hartenstein, surprisingly, is number 14. Then they have Chet, J-Dub, and Alex Caruso. This is a very talented team. In the Western Conference, it all depends on who gets hot at the right time, because Dallas got hot at the right time, and that's why they made a run. I think Minnesota, Dallas, and because of Jokic and what he can provide you in any series, they can go band for OKC, but OKC is the most talented team. I think the only question with them is, can they really match up with Boston and handle that physicality? Because you look at Boston, and it feels as if Boston is a more mature version of what OKC is currently building. Mm-hmm. Kristaps Porzingis is a mature version of Chet. Jaylen Brown is a mature version of J-Dub. SGA is the only one that goes toe-to-toe with Tatum. And then you look at the role players, the Thunders, Isaiah Hartenstein and Caruso. I think they're great, but that's not better than Derek White and Drew Holiday. So I just think that the Celtics are a more mature version, but the OKC Thunder, they're the most talented team in the West.
I think my only concern is more about how the offense is going to run. Are they going to change their philosophy of the 5-out offense? Are they going to plug in two big man lineup? How does Shea come into next year being a better playmaker? Not having a big that he can hit on the short roll like Hartenstein. Like, this is a whole. It's not. I wouldn't say a whole different philosophy or scheme, but this is something Mark is definitely going to have to draw up. And teams aren't shocked by you now. They're going to be waiting for you, expecting you, have a bit of a better game plan for you. So that's really the only concern for me, because I think bringing in Caruso, I think he's an easy plug-in player. He comes in, he defends well. He's shown the ability to shoot the 3-ball. He can hit, he can be a good playmaker, a good connector. So it's just really about how are you going to adjust to Hartenstein and Chet, this new dynamic big, type difference, especially when SGA is more under the 3-point line. Like, he's more mid-range to the rim. Will he come in with a different type of 3? Will he take more volume threes? J-Dub, how is he going to produce? I do think Dallas has a point where they did make improvements, but I think the West is still matchup dependent. Mm-hmm. I think you still have Minnesota, who, if you run a 2-big lineup, I think that's the perfect thing for them. That's the way they like to play. I think defensively they get a lot more aggressive. With Dallas, I don't think, they've dropped off a ton. I think the players they got are much better than the players that they had. And I think they already beat OKC, so going to the matchup, I don't think that's still a far-off bet to still take Dallas, because I think they have improved. So it's really just a matchup dependent. You do have to rely on J-Dub or Chet to make that leap, but you have to also, rely on Mark Daigneault to kind of make these adjustments and kind of, tinker with this offense and tinker with this pick and roll that they love to run, because Hardenstein ran a lot of DHOs when he was with New York with Jalen Brunson. SGA doesn't use a shit ton of pick and rolls. That's not really a big element to his game. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interested to add that to his game now, see what type of leap he makes as a playmaker. So I'm excited to see just OKC really just elevate, because I think that's the interesting part about it. They were a number 1 seed, but I still feel like there's another level that they can get to, maybe 2 more levels that they can get to, because this team is so young. You had Kaysen, SGA, Chet, J-Dub making debuts. Well, not SGA, but for the most part, SGA making a debut as the guy
number 1
in the playoffs. Like, not to mention Dortz hasn't been there a ton, so he's another guy that's still fresh. Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, like, this team was fresh and new in the playoffs. So are they the favorites? I wouldn't be mad at putting them there. They've made the right moves, and on top of that, how is Minnesota going to look? How is Denver going to look? But losing KCP, it's going to be different. So, but I think putting them the favorite is fair. But for me, the top 4 is pretty simple. It's OKC, Minnesota, Denver, and I am blanking. Dallas. Dallas is the 4th team, and I think those are the 4 comfortables in the West.
It's not Dallas. Lakers?
No, bro.
Warriors?
No shot. We'll get in.
I definitely agree with all the points you guys made. I think it really just does come down to, the leaps that J-Dub and Chet make, because those are your supporting stars. Those are the guys that have to be able to help Shea in a game 7 or, just other situations, make plays. I think, figuring out how those 2 bigs work and which lineups and how they play together, how much does Chet play at the 4 and how can he still be effective in that? I feel like we kind of have collectively acted like a 21-year-old just is incapable of making certain leaps and being able to create advantages and score on wings and do those types of things. So I think it's still a possibility, but we're going to have to see it. And then I think the other only like concern I have with this team is just like adding a third ball handler. It doesn't necessarily need to be like a traditional point guard, but at least in lineups when Shea does leave the court, can J-Dub fully run the offense, or is there somebody else out there to be able to go get? With Caruso in there, is Dort expendable to some extent? You push Kaysen up if you believe in him in that way. So that would be the only other concern I have, like, or just the way that they can reach that like next step. But yeah, they have everything. They would be my favorite going into this season.
To be honest with you, you talk about pushing maybe Lou Dort's out of there and bringing in a Kaysen. That makes a lot of sense. Against the Mavericks, a lot of missed opportunity was because of missed open shots. You saw Lou Dort get a ton of those looks and miss a good amount of them. I won't excuse Kaysen Wallace either. That's one of my guys. Kaysen Wallace definitely shit that bed in Game 6. But you already know that Alex Caruso is pretty reliable when it comes to knocking down an open shot. We've seen him play in high leverage situations with the Los Angeles Lakers and step up to the plate and hit home runs. I think that he allows you that flexibility of, hey, this guy doesn't have it tonight. We're not dropping off even a little bit on the defensive side. If we do bring Dortz to the bench, we bring in Caruso, we bring in Wallace, who I still trust as a more reliable shooting option than Lou Dortz. But he is not excused. I'm not going to excuse a bad performance. A bad performance is a bad performance, but how defensively versatile they are, it's a luxury.